looks likely that we might get the white pieces, so let me know what you'd like to see. Jump into another slow chess game. Another 15-minuter. Ooh, we got the black pieces again. All right. E4. What do we think? I'll play knight f6. I don't think I've played the ELO too much. Do I recommend the opening? I truly don't. I've talked about how lower rated players should play openings where you take the center. So, do I think you should play openings like this? No. I can still play it and see where we go. But no, for the most part, like an opening like this where your knight gets chased around, I do not want to see anyone walking around playing that, that's for sure. All right, knight to c3. So, I mean, if I play e5, we're obviously transposing back to e4, e5. But I'm going to play d5 because there's got to be some reason why everyone plays e5 and not knight c3, right? When you're playing e4, knight f6, the point is you want to play e5. That's the whole reason you play the opening as white. So knight c3 is definitely not, I would say, not the top move. And if I'm not mistaken, after e5 here, the idea is d4. So takes, and you get this kind of equal-ish looking position. Both sides lose a knight. And although white's the one moving first, it's nice because if you take here, I'm taking back with a check, and I also have pawn takes on d2, which will also be a check. So that's how I can kind of survive here, because if pawn takes here, pawn takes here, pawn takes here, pawn takes here, it would have that very awkward moment where the newfound queen comes all the way back and takes mine, which would be a little embarrassing. All right, b takes. I'm going to take this way. Open things up here. I like these double pawns. They really help control squares that knight often wants to use. So what do I want to do? Probably just castle. The reason why I'm highlighting this square instead of this is like, there's no knight here, there's no pin happening. Makes no sense to have a bishop on e7. So definitely the bishop belongs on d6. And castling is going to feel really safe with this extra pawn in front of our king. It's just like a little meat shield. There we go. Get castled, and because our opponent isn't castled yet, most likely my next move is, gonna be something like that. Because king's not castled, bishop e2 is a waste of time, knight e5 is not possible, and bishop e3 might not be where that bishop wants to end up. So it's just a nice way to start. Like when your opponent's king is in the middle, you're castled, they're not, and you can play rook e1 or e8 and check the opponent's king. I can say quite literally like 99 out of 100 times that will be the best move. Or at the very least, a good move. So, bishop e3, and now we need to think just for a sec because, hang on. What about bishop here? If the king castles, we just take, and seemingly we win a pawn there. Yes, we're going to be investing some time, which doesn't feel great, but I think we do win the material. So bishop here, queen d2, or queen d3 to defend. And then it's like, wait a minute, I can also add the queen on. Right? I can put the queen there as well to also attack e3. And I think what might happen is that we end up winning a pawn, but it costs us a lot of time, and it might still be a balanced position. But it's intriguing me. Bishop here, queen d3, let's say queen e7, castles, bishop captures e3, rook e1. Bishop takes f2, rook takes f2, queen d8. Trades. And then I'm looking at things like knight g5. Those are the things that scare me. Knight g5 threatens check on h7 and threatens the f7 pawn. So I know that's pretty far advanced, but that's just me calculating it out. My instinct is that stuff like that existed. The calculation is just verifying that it's true, but I already don't feel good about positions where I will literally have 0 pieces developed there except my queen, and my queen may even be back here on d8 or e8. My opponent's going to be fully mobilized and only down 1 pawn and playing moves like this, which are super frightening. Literally every piece aimed at my king. So, yeah, I'm not... Forgive me for not getting super excited about that. So I think we want to just develop instead. Let's just develop. Bishop f5 kind of looks nice. Knight d7, knight b6. Not a bad idea. I'm kind of liking bishop f5 as a move. Bishop g4 is like, yeah, tempting, but h3, bishop here, and eventually g4 can always happen. The main reason I don't think bishop g4 does much is I don't really have any knight that can ever make a threat against this knight, so. Whoa. Queen to b1. It's a remarkable looking move. Instead of castling, my opponent is attacking a pawn. I mean, yes, still defending this pawn, but it wasn't really threatened anyway. Queen b1. Well, one thing that's true is knight c6, queen b7, knight a5. I think there's bishop takes, queen check. A lot of things loose in the position. So I don't think that quite works. Knight here doesn't look that nice either, if I'm honest. I really want my knight here, so it's a little annoying that it doesn't work right away. Queen c8. Yeah, it's a move. Maybe queen b3. A little threat there. Does look fine for black, but a little bit weird to, maybe have to move my bishop again. Doesn't feel great. And the easiest, most obvious move, b6, I actually just don't really like. Just feels like the wrong idea. Might be the move we end up playing, but does feel a little bit iffy. There's bishop d5, like, it's like I might play it, but I'm definitely gonna feel a little about playing it. I do think it's the move I'll do. I just want my queen to go somewhere in the middle. Don't want to move it there. Like I kind of have to do it. Bishop here, we have c6. Queen b3, I was going to play queen d7 to watch over that. b6 is ugly. Yeah, I don't like it. Believe me, I don't like doing it. b6 seems like the same problem as the London. I know what you're talking about. Yeah, it was queen b6, and I was saying white never wants to play b3, but b3 was bad specifically because of the structure. So here, if I had like a pawn chain like this, I would feel worse about playing this because I know that my pawn chain will look better if I just have this. But I don't have any pawns in the center, so honestly, this structure is perfectly fine. Still doesn't feel good, believe me. The light square is being weak, but I have a light squared bishop. It can access this diagonal easily. I'm not too discouraged. Can I do an educational series for titled players? Respectfully, not only are the blitz games that I play at my actual rating probably the most instructive for titled players compared to 1100s, but also no. I'd rather tap into the market of millions and billions of people rather than the market of hundreds. Okay, attacking this pawn. Queen d7 was my plan to guard it, and I'm choosing queen d7 on purpose so that I can play knight c6. And these pieces look good right now, and I agree that they are good, but knight here is going to really annoy the hell out of him. So yeah, I'll start with this. And then probably knight here. Hello, Red Drum. Hello, Brando. You guys made it here for the slow chess show. This pawn, say what you want about it, but it's a hero. It's a hero. Well, you're going to need 2 moves for that, Brennan. So you're absolutely right that this is a scary proposition because you can imagine it just being pinned and maybe lost. But I'm never scared of it because I always have a move to hit the bishop. So, for example, if it was my turn here, I would play knight here and I wouldn't be concerned. Bishop b5, I just play a6. And you don't have time to do any moves that you want to do because I just boot the bishop out. So because of that, I'm not scared of it. But if my pawn was on a5, I would be deathly scared of bishop b5. Absolutely. So yeah, I'm thinking this. There are some moves that can be played, but guess what? Knight a5 is such a nasty move to follow up that I think it needs an immediate answer. So I'm going to go here. Again, this, I feel like we have an answer in just a6. And bishop e4 also lends some support to the knight if needed, maybe. But knight a5 is the real idea. If my opponent played knight h4 on the previous turn or any moves before, I probably would have gone bishop e4. Basically, a move like knight h4 is almost never... Sometimes it's playable, but it's almost never good when the bishop can drop back somewhere in the center. Like, it's a good move if, let's say, the pawn's on e6, because then there's real concern. The most likely situation you see knight h4, knight h5 is when the pawn structure looks like this. If you have 3 pawns here, it's understandable knight h4, because then it's like the only square available is that. If you go to g4, you might get harassed more, and if you go to e4, f3, your bishop's kind of stuck. Has to go back anyway. But here, knight here, and I go bishop e4, it's like f3. All of a sudden, my bishop can return to b7. That bishop on e3 will be loose. And by playing f3, you're actually literally trapping your knight on h4 that you just put there. So that wouldn't make a lot of sense either. But it almost never makes sense to go like this and attack a bishop when it can just return to the center. Because the whole point of doing this is you want to take it, usually. Hello, Eddie. Good to see you, buddy. So we know what I'm up to. I'm looking to win the bishop, basically, with knight a5. I say win, but if I was able to just trade bishop for knight, I consider that a win, so. Rook to d8, knight a5. These sorts of moves are on my mind. I've been enjoying the game so far. I can say that. I think my opponent's playing well. Don't know if this idea is any good by white, but it's, you know, it was at least an idea. He had a very clear intention. He hit b7 on the way. He's gotten castled safely. Materials equal. I think it's been a really good game so far. Why do I want the bishop? That's an open position, right? Definitely a wide open position. There's no pawns like locked together, anything like that. Open position, you always want the bishops. That much is true. Queen a4. Nice, nice. So queen a4, what I'm immediately thinking is, surprisingly, the move knight takes d4. And the reason that I'm considering this is because if the queen takes me, by the way, the queen is hanging. So knight d4 is insufficient. Knight takes d4, queen takes queen. Well, then I pop in, I trade the knight, and then I take back on d7. And I've won a pawn by doing that. So that looks like a pretty nice conversion. Knight d4. So the only thing that is a little bit bothersome about knight d4, which should win immediately, is maybe moves like this. And, I mean, it's not really bothersome. Like, I get the bishop for the knight, and we trade pawns as well, so it's fine, obviously. But it's definitely on my mind as the most likely outcome. So I'm not sure we win a pawn, but it's still a very good move. Knight e5 is the other move I could play. Queen takes queen, knight takes, and bishop takes back. I don't win a pawn there, though, and it trades a lot of pieces, so I'm not really interested in it, but whenever you see this queen loose on the side, super common tactic is right in the center of the board, so I'm definitely going to take. If this happens, let's say I take with the queen, it's like, it's not really a problem. I'm getting the bishop. But I think after this, if king takes, first of all, the same problem persists if queen takes queen, right? I insert knight takes knight first. But what I can do is take back with the king. Now the queen is forced to capture. And then I would probably snag that pawn on c2. And I have the bishop pair as well. So that would be my plan. So queen takes here, and remember, before taking back and losing a piece, oops, I'm going to take this, a check, and then I'm going to take back. So then what I'm doing is I'm ending up a pawn. That's a good trade-off for me. So always on the lookout for these tricks. You see this a lot in various openings, but when the queen is just sitting on the side of the board, knight d5 or knight d4 should always be calculated, because the queen will usually be hanging on the side. So when the queen like takes you or takes whatever's behind the knight being exposed, then you often have this like knight takes something with check trick. And yeah, you're absolutely right. Yeah, 928. After pawn takes, bishop takes, there is no worse pawn structure in chess. Like, it's almost as bad as it gets. He's thinking a lot here. And generally he's spending his time, which is good to see. But truly there was only one move there. Just a little unfortunate that that was the case. Yeah. Pawn islands are brutal here, Ralph. Okay, so now we have an endgame. Really bad pawns. So I'm obviously looking forward to my chances here. I don't mind trades. I would trade any bishop for any bishop here. But for the moment, I really like mine, so I'm not sure I'm itching to trade. Bishop c6 stands out, you know, denies bishop d5, which is a nice central square. So, and it also gets off the d file so that I can use it. So I like this move, bishop c6 to start off. Also makes a threat. And then from there, moves that I'm probably going to do are king f8, rook d8, maybe double. But yeah, probably king f8, rook over. Maybe start to push the pawns a little bit. King g2 makes sense, but also ends up in a pin. f4, though, really weakens the king. f4 looks like wrong. Definitely wrong. The reason I like king f8 is it gets out of the pin and brings my king closer to the center. So if we ever need to trade rooks here, it's just nice to have my king there ready. And in the event that everything gets traded, my king will be closer to the center. Mike is donating $5 from jail here. Wants to know the set. Mike, I'll put the set in the chat. Don't worry, I got you, Mike. The set is in the chat. There you go. King g2. I think it's time to play king f8. This is before I do anything, I'm just a big fan of this. Our bishop is placed so well that I'm never really going to be regretting this move. Support the rook, and we can always bring the rook over. We can always bring the rook over after. This is just a great preparatory move for an endgame. Okay, rook e2. Definitely a little bit weird. Now that my king is close, I'm feeling like this move may be good. So the reason I like this is because bishop f4 technically looks like we can play this. Rook e5, bishop f4, rook e2. They can trade here and take back. So it's okay for me, not great. But after bishop there, rook c5, I'm wondering if we win a pawn here. Yes, they can take on d6, but that should be pretty good position for us. So I'm going to go rook e5. I also really enjoy that as soon as this bishop is not defending that square, that's going to win. So bishop here, we can go rook c5. We can also go rook f5. Takes, and you know, this is a target on f3. So the problem is, if I attack this pawn twice, right now I'm threatening rook f5, which seems to be quite crushing. So if you double the rooks and you think no big deal, then rook f5 makes you look silly. Because surprisingly, this bishop cannot help defend, and there's not a single piece in white's position that can defend f3. So a very natural looking move, rook e1, but rook f5 is so insanely strong. And this is why, I mean, I think literally everybody in chat right now can look at these pawns and agree and understand that they're bad pawns. Like, they're weak, they're wrong, shouldn't have them. But why are they bad is pretty much on display right here. The fact that there's no pawns supporting it, there's not even a pawn you can put to, like, interpose the diagonal, nothing. Like, this is exactly why these pawns are so weak, because they're so easy to attack and so hard to defend. So rook f5. And, by the way, my king doesn't have to be here, but I'm very happy that it is. I just don't like the pressure of a potential rook e8 existing in the position, so having my king here makes me feel very secure. All right, bishop to d3. We need to take. Rook takes is okay, but not sure that it's going to be the best. Bishop takes is an obvious good move. Hitting both of these. Now, when the king moves, it's not so obvious that we want to take this rook, because then we lose our own rook. So what seems clear to me is that this king is going to move. We're going to save our rook. The rook will need to move to the only legal square, d2, and then it'll be our turn again to continue the initiative. So we'll wait and see where the king goes. It's chosen a square where the rook can actually be taken with check, but, and this might surprise you, but I'm actually not interested in taking the rook here. So I'll save my rook by going rook h5. This rook is still hit, and I'm threatening basically a mate in 2. And there's not a lot that you can do about that. So I'm not sure how you avoid getting mated without heavy material loss here. Because even if you go like that and save your rook, you're getting mated. Even if you hang this rook, I feel like you're almost getting mated. Like, you know, take this rook and, like, put it there. It's like, you know, position is still very bad. So we save our rook. I can take this at any point. This move is not possible. So even if I don't end up mating him here, I'll just take the rook later. Bishop f4 looks like the only move. Bishop f4 is pretty bad because, you know, you lose all sorts of things and it only delays it. But I think you could maybe play this and run the king there. I mean, it's not pretty, but it does technically escape. So yeah, it's not a forced mate here. Not at all. Wow. I should have known that a bad move suggested from the chat would be precisely the move that my opponent decides to play. Bishop f4. So definitely just going to take this. And by the way, why is my king so amazingly placed? Can we talk about this? Bishop takes f4. Rook e8 would be mate. Thank you very much. So we're just going to take this and have the exact same threats. If I take here, the bishop takes back, and although there's a hanging bishop, there's a hanging rook here. So I absolutely want to play bishop takes f4 here because it keeps all my threats alive, and the rook's still hanging, and there's no issues down there. So bishop takes f4, and wow, look how great that king on f8 is. Winning the game on its own. Another move is like bishop e4. Hits the rook, hits the bishop, but again, my bishop can take on e2 with check. So I think we should end up ahead an entire rook here, or checkmating. One of the two. Bishop b5 to threaten a mate idea. Not only drops the bishop, drops the rook, but probably ends up getting still mated down there, even if we ignore and just hide our king. So h3, as you can imagine, is not really going to stop checkmate. So we're going to take it. There's still no checkmate for white, and to be honest, rook h1 is unstoppable unless you play this. So the best you could do is delay checkmate for 3 more moves, it looks like. 1, recapture 2, check 3, but then you gotta face the music. I like it, I like it. I guess the most resilient was to play king e1 and drop the bishop back, although it would have quite literally put you in a zugzwang. But bishop b5, hey, I was only marginally better than my opponent here. Although we have a mate in 1, they were 1 move away from mate in 1 as well. So depending which story you're trying to sell, that's the way you tell the story. Oh yeah, I had mate in 1, but ended up losing. Oh yeah, no, it's a close game. Yeah, I played a grandmaster the other day. Ended up losing, close battle, but I did have mate in 1. I did have mate in 1. GG. And I don't know if Deceptor was in chat, but he did say hello, Mon, in our chess.com chat. So maybe he's in here. He definitely played his own game, though. You could tell. Let's look at this one. I'm not even going to ask you guys what you think the brilliancy was, because it's a little obvious. But we did have 1 brilliancy. Oh no, we want that on just to see the brilliancy. So we decided to play. Knight f6. I don't think it's a great opening. So I definitely don't recommend playing it. But knight c3 for sure is very friendly, because now we get to play d5. And after e5, it's kind of uncomfortable here, unless you're familiar with the book move, I guess, which is d4. Because if you try to play around this and go like knight d7, you might be playing like a weird French position, maybe e6, and suddenly you're playing some funky looking position there. But d4 is the theory. You both take the knights. This is definitely not a good move. Yeah, this was friendly for us. Usually white will take one of these. So I think the main line is like taking on g7. Black then needs to take here with a check, because otherwise you're just going to lose a pawn. And so white recaptures. And clearly white is a little bit preferred here because the pawns are just nicer. That's just the answer. But it's basically even. So that's the theory as far as I know it. But this I liked for me. Now, I'm a big fan of these double pawns. Super safe for my king. Castle. Always give a check. Just, you want to see what happens. And I do want to show you guys this line with the evaluation on. Just because I do think after bishop f4, let's say queen d3, I really do think that here, rook e1, I do think it's important that you appreciate how crazy these positions can get. It looks like you're just winning material, but you take, right? I turn off the feedback and it gets rid of my variation. No. Yeah, bishop f4, queen e7. And this, to me, is exactly how things can get crazy. So you move your queen, and this was a line that I was mentioning in the game. Takes, knight g5, and it's like... this is not the kind of game you want to be playing. Like, everything is scary here. And the evaluation is probably going to slowly improve for white, but there's this check to take that. There's h7 hanging. The queen is against 3 pieces. So the 3 pieces will always be very, very nice to have. But they need to, like, develop to their actual squares. Right now, the king is in a tough position. And you have to deal with a ton of checks. So it's a weird, it would just be a weird position. Not something you really want to deal with. Queen b1 was really, really interesting. I was like, I wanted to do this, but I was a little scared of this, honestly. Yeah, the moves are queen d7 and bishop e4. Both just admitting that you're kind of down a pawn. Because knight here doesn't quite work. This was one of the lines we noticed. Kind of unfortunate. So I don't love b6, but I know that it's not a terrible move because it supports the knight on a5, so it's actually kind of useful. Queen b3, queen d7. I really like the position here because I knew that if I got to play knight c6, we would be a-okay. Yeah. And now black is just much better. Knight's coming to a5, rook over, and queen a4 was unfortunately a mistake. And like I said, no points for telling me which move got the brilliancy because obviously it was knight takes d4. Yeah, worst pawns you could ever have. And I liked our technique here. King f8, then rook e5 to f5, nasty. And rook h5, of course, is much, much better than just taking the rook. And yeah, then the mistakes kept happening. And GG. It was a good game, though, from my opponent here. Like, 900, he lost a slow game, and he had some energy at the start with this queen maneuver. And then this is it's a mistake, but it's kind of understandable. Like, queen a4 is a little low dill. Queen a4 is a little, I guess it's like an understandable mistake. You don't realize how bad it is, but knight d4 is a great response, of course. And then from here, it's honestly tough to play. You know, it's just gonna be really, really depressing.